Welcome back to another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast. We're back with another game preview here. Big time SEC matchup. Tennessee Volunteers on the road at Alabama. Tennessee, of course, has been very uneven as of late. They lost to Kentucky last Saturday, so they've had this full week to prep for this one. Had a bye midweek. Before that, double overtime against A&M. Lost to Florida in ugly fashion on the road before that. It just hasn't been pretty, especially against some of the better teams in the SEC. They're sitting at 12-6 now. And then for Alabama, they've stumbled a little bit. They lost to the 7th and the 10th to Vanderbilt in Texas, surprisingly Texas at home. But it followed that up with two wins against Mississippi State and Oklahoma. Another Alabama didn't play midweek this week either. They play Saturday at home, 8:30 against Tennessee. But Cody, we'll start with Tennessee. What does Tennessee need to do to pick up a road victory here?
Yeah, I'm sure nobody's seen anything about Alabama in the news in the past couple of days with the whole, Bediako situation. That's for a different day, and who knows how long he's going to play. But Nate Oates did say that he's probably going to play on Saturday, so we'll see. We'll see what happens there. And he's a real factor. But I'll let you dive into that on the Alabama side. But for Tennessee, I still think they can expose what Alabama's weakness is up front. And, that's on the defensive glass. Just one more point on Bediako. He's a really good shot blocker, but he's never been the greatest defensive rebounder. Maybe he's improved that at the pro level before he came back. That's such a weird thing to say. Maybe he's gotten a little bit bigger. I haven't seen any Bediako since he left Alabama. So,
he has, if you Google him, his first photo is him in a Spurs uniform.
Yeah, it's a dicey situation. Who knows how long he's even going to be there? He's there for the week. I don't really know what else is going on, but regardless, I still think Alabama is gettable on the glass. They're 288th in defensive rebound rate in the country. You're facing the number one offensive rebound rate team in the nation in Tennessee, who's 44.2% on the offensive glass, which is insane. You're almost grabbing half your misses against, and they played some good teams. They played some pretty good rebounding teams as well, and they've just been able to assert their physical dominance in games. And I think that's going to be a real factor, especially playing in a tough road environment. Getting as many shots up on the rim as possible is going to give you a really good chance. And just to touch on Bama's defensive rebound rates a little bit, they've really struggled against elite offensive rebound rate teams. Purdue was 47.5% against them. Gonzaga was 46.5%. Arizona 43.1%. South Florida was 50%. And Texas was 41.9%. I don't anticipate Tennessee going anywhere below 40, and 40 is an elite number. So I do think Tennessee has a real edge on the glass. And I also think they can have real success in post-up actions with, starting with Jalen Carey, Estrella when he gets his minutes, maybe a little bit of Nate Ament, who he likes to work through the mid-post. We know that he's had his struggles against top-tier competition. It's gotten better over the past few games, so he's getting a little bit more adjusted. He kind of has a tough matchup here. I'm assuming he draws Amari Allen, and Amari Allen is a pretty good defender. He's been one of the more underrated players all year. I know we've talked about that a little bit, about how good he's been and how underappreciated he is. So he's a good defender. It's going to be a tough matchup, but Nate Ament has been better. So up front, I think there's real avenues for Tennessee on the offensive end. And I think Jacoby Gillespie has opportunities against Alabama's drop coverage. And I'm assuming now that Alabama has two good rim protectors that they're going to try to stick to their drop coverage. They're very thin up front right now. I would assume Noah Williamson's out of the rotation. He wasn't really playing any drop when he was in the game. They were using him a little bit more to show and play at the level in ball screens. This probably isn't a great outlook for Keaton Bristow either, who's been hurt. Maybe his injury is a little bit worse than we're kind of anticipating. I haven't seen anything on him in a few games, so maybe his injury is, he's potentially out long term. But he's been a guy that he could come in and switch. They could kind of play a switch all defense there, and he could get after the ball, high hedge it a little bit in ball screens. But with Bediako and Sherelle, two good shot blockers, I think they're going to try to keep those guys attached to the rim And that's going to create opportunities for Jacoby Gillespie coming off screens. This is where he's at his best, either coming off a screen off the ball or in pick and roll situations with his dribble pull-up game. So I do think there's avenues for Tennessee in primary actions and in the shot volume battle. And defensively, I don't really view it as the worst matchup. I think first and foremost, they can limit transition, or even in like if Alabama's getting transition opportunities, like Tennessee is athletic enough to hang around with the speed of Alabama. So I think limiting transition, or just limiting the amount of transition buckets that you allow, is going to be huge in this game. And then limiting the dribble creation of LeBaron Philon and Aiden Holloway, which is going to be the toughest aspect of this game. Tennessee does a pretty good job of eliminating attacking kick plays, and they do a nice job of not allowing unguarded catch and shoot opportunities, which is, that's Alabama's like main concept is, dribble drive, create a shrink three. And that's kind of how they beat you over the course of 40 minutes is, with their high shot quality, with their rim and three. But I do think Tennessee is going to force them to just, play against their elite rim protection. And, they're not going to try to, shrink the floor as often. So, Gillespie, Bishop Boswell, and, like Amari Evans, that's kind of been the main rotation in the backcourt and on the wing for Tennessee lately. So those guys need to be good. And I think they're all above average defenders to at least give them a chance to contain those guys off the bounce. So, and, Tennessee, they give up a high volume of threes, but like I said, they don't give up many high quality threes. They give up like the catch and shoot threes that they allow are 4 or 5 feet behind the line, which Alabama's more than willing to take, but it's not like they're going to hit them at a stupid clip unless they're just on fire, and they have plenty of options to do so. But your best chance of slowing them down is forcing them to take these threes further away from the line, and, kind of baiting them into taking 28 footers, I guess, could be, an avenue, and they're going to be more than willing to take them. But I think that's the best chance for Tennessee's defense.
Yeah, it's too bad for Tennessee this game isn't being played on an NBA floor, right? Like we saw early in the season, like teams they didn't acknowledge that they're shooting like 3 feet behind the NBA line.
That actually might benefit Alabama, because they'll just take those anyway, and like they're the best in the country at it. So,
right, yeah. So, no, I mean, I think the biggest key, and you started with it, and that's where I'm going to start as well, just on the flip side of it. Alabama needs to limit second chance opportunities for Tennessee. Tennessee first in the country in offensive rebound rate, and like you said, like Alabama doesn't defensive rebound really at all. I don't really think that's going to change a ton with the addition of Bediako. Who knows what kind of role he's really going to play. It's a super unique situation, right? I mean, he played 3 years in the G League, including 6 games this season, started in a game.
He has more G League experience than he does college.
Yeah, he's played 46 G League games to 70 college games.
Oh, 70, yeah. I guess like years wise, I think it's
been. Yeah, no, he does. It's pretty unbelievable. But they're really going to need to limit second chance opportunities in this game, because I think that's where Tennessee's offense can hurt you the most, right? This Tennessee offense we've talked about a lot this season not being very good, especially in the half court. They just don't have a wide range of options. There's not a ton of guard depth. So generating second chance opportunities for them is going to be, their driving force on the offensive end, I think, along with, like you mentioned, Gillespie being able to make shots. If he can get going in the mid-range or off the bounce from three, it's going to maybe spell some trouble. It's a game where I think like Alabama's probably fortunate that Tennessee doesn't exactly have like a big that's going to be in pick and pop situations against their drop coverage, right? So I think that definitely helps them out a little bit. But even still, Gillespie's a really good player, and we could see him light it up like he has in many other games with probably the comfort that he's going to feel against the drop coverage. And then I think it's just trying to take away like Jalen Carey post-up opportunities, right? I know like last year, it was a big bet that you love to make was the Janai Broome prop bet against Alabama because they just refused to send help. And Jalen Carey's he's only listed at 6'8", but he's a really physical guy that uses his body very well. Gets to his left hand over and over. So I think it's trying to limit his clean rim attempts, right? And then when he gets offensive rebounds, just trying to use some of that rim protection that you have, and now that you're potentially adding with whatever role Bediako is going to play, to sort of take those away and make it a little bit harder on him. On the offensive end for Alabama, I think it's trying to push the pace, right? I think if Tennessee gets into a game that's a shootout, like it's not going to set up very well for them, right? Particularly on the road. Like they're not a team I think that can score in bunches, right? We saw the game at Arkansas, for anyone that watched that game, and it was pretty back and forth. Tennessee kind of had control for a stretch, but then Arkansas was able to really get in transition due to Tennessee's lack of ball control, right? They turned the ball over at a very high clip. And while that's not really a concern against an Alabama defense that hardly forces any turnovers, I still think that there are inevitably going to be stretches in this game where Alabama is able to get out in transition and generate, open catch and shoot threes in transition or rim attempts. We saw it in that game against Arkansas, and Arkansas is not even necessarily a defense that forces a high clip of turnovers. So, if they're able to do that, I think it really sets up poorly if this game gets played in like the upper 70s into the 80s. Like, I don't know if Tennessee can score enough unless Gillespie really just goes off, or they just dominate the offensive glass, which they very well could. But I think that's the key for Alabama, is trying to push this pace and make Tennessee play a game that's not overly comfortable to them. And then I think just making shots, like you said, Tennessee's going to give up some deeper ones. They're going to give up some open ones at times. Obviously, you have the dynamic guard play of Holloway and Philon, who should be able to have big days. Like Philon's a guy to me that's almost like matchup proof at this point. He's been fantastic, 22 points a game, scoring it well at all three levels. So I would expect him to have plenty of success here, despite like Tennessee's typical really good defense. We've touched on how Tennessee's defense is not quite the same this season as it's been in years past. But those two guys, I think their ability to create downhill and spray out to tons of shooters across the board here really could spell trouble for this Tennessee defense if they're forced into rotation over and over, depending on some of the lineups that they end up playing. Like Jalen Carey isn't a fantastic defender at all. Like if you're forcing him into multiple actions against, Philon and Holloway, and having to, over rotate, I think it just sets up pretty poorly for Tennessee's defense. But like you said, they do a decent job of limiting transition as long as they're taking care of the basketball. So I think it'll be an interesting matchup from that perspective in the pace, in a pace sense, but should be a fun game. I think it's a Tennessee team that's really, I think, hungry for a win. You would think, they're sitting at 12-6, fall to 12-7. We've already touched on it, I think, last week in our weekly recap. Tennessee could be starting to flirt with, dipping down into like an 8, 9, 10 seed type range, which sounds far-fetched, but they just aren't winning the big games that they need to win, right? They've lost pretty much every big game on their schedule up to this point. And they've labored to some other wins. So This is another big one for them, a road test that won't be easy. But Cody, who are you going with here to win this one?
Yeah, and I think Amari Allen playing the 4 if could put Jalen Carey in a really tough spot defensively. I don't know if they would put him on Allen or throw him on the 5, and then you space out Okpara. So I do think that's a decent matchup edge for Alabama. And I feel like I've been an Alabama hater on this pod, and I have picked against them a lot. But I'm going with the Vols. I think they can win the shot volume edge by quite a bit, and I think that's massive in a road setting. And I think they're going to limit quality catch and shoot threes in this game. If they're giving up a catch and shoot 3, it's going to be from a ways away from the line. They force more dribble threes than any team in the country. And Alabama actually isn't all that efficient, shooting threes off the bounce. Believe it or not, it does seem like they would be one of the more talented teams of doing that. They probably are, but they just haven't been that efficient in that way this season. So Tennessee, they've also won 4 straight meetings between these two, and I think their ability to dominate on the glass has been a real edge. So I like them to get it done on the road, and I think they win it. It's going to be a tight game, and I do have it in the 80s, but I think Tennessee is able to generate too many second chances for Alabama to come away with this win at home. So I have Tennessee winning at 83-82.
Yeah. Spot perspective, I really would like to take Tennessee. I just from what I've seen from them, I just struggle to. I do think they cover whatever the spread is. I think it projects around 4.5. Yeah, I do think they cover it, but I do think Alabama gets the job done. I'll say they pull it out late. I think Tennessee can limit possessions a little bit. I'm going to say Alabama wins it 81-79. But before we wrap things up, anything else to add, Cody?
Nothing really. I'll save my Bediako thoughts for the review, for the week review. We'll probably get into that a little bit, so I'll save them.
Okay, cool. All right, we'll wrap things up here. Should be a fun SEC matchup, but thank you all for listening to the Mainly Hoops podcast.